The laughter hit me like a slap across the face at Vossin Industries Christmas party. Rhett Vossin, my wife's boss, stood there in his $1,000 suit, pointing at my jacket like I'd worn a garbage bag to the opera. "Dean, buddy," Rhett announced to the entire room, his voice carrying that particular brand of arrogance that comes with old money and newer power. "Should I slip you some cash? That jacket looks like it came from a discount rack." The room erupted. Executives, managers, even the waitstaff. Everyone found it hilarious. But what really twisted the knife was watching Talia, my wife of 8 years, join in with that tinkling laugh she saved for impressing her corporate friends. "Oh, Rhett, you're terrible," she giggled, touching his arm in that way that should have been reserved for me. I forced a smile, the kind that doesn't reach your eyes. "Thanks for the concern, Rhett, but I'm doing just fine." If only they knew the truth. If only they realized that the cheap guy in the corner owned more Vossin Industries stock than anyone in this room suspected. My college buddy Soren had been quietly acquiring shares for me over the past 3 years, building a position while I fed him inside information from Talia's loose lips. The irony was delicious. Rhett's quarterly bonus had been funded partly by my real estate investments, channeled through shell companies that kept Vossin afloat during their rough patch last year. But here he was, treating me like some charity case who'd wandered in off the street. I excused myself to the bathroom, pulling out my phone. One text to Soren. "Now." His reply came instantly. "About time. Tomorrow's board meeting should be interesting." When I returned to the party, Talia was whispering something in Rhett's ear. He glanced at me and smirked. Whatever she'd told him, it wasn't flattering. "Having fun, honey?" I asked, sliding up beside them. "Oh, Dean." Talia's voice was bright and fake. "Rhett was just telling me about the new project. It's going to be huge." "I bet it is." I looked directly at Rhett. Funny how things can change overnight in business, isn't it? Something flickered in his eyes. Uncertainty, maybe even a hint of worry. Good. He should be worried. The party continued around us, but I'd already mentally checked out. Tomorrow would bring the first phase of something I'd been planning for months. Tonight's humiliation was just the final push I needed. As we drove home through the snow-dusted streets, Talia chattered about the party, about Rhett's brilliant leadership, about how lucky she was to work for such a visionary company. I nodded and made appropriate sounds, but my mind was elsewhere. "You were quiet tonight," she said as we pulled into our driveway. "Just tired. Long day." "Well, try to be more social next time. These events are important for networking." I almost laughed. Networking, if she only knew what kind of network I'd been building. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The next morning, Talia left early for what she called a strategy session. I knew better. Her phone had been buzzing with messages at odd hours, and she'd started password protecting everything. Classic signs. While she was gone, I conducted my own strategy session. Her laptop was still logged into her personal email. She'd always been careless about security. What I found there made my jaw clench. Months of correspondence with Rhett, not just professional discussions but personal ones. Plans for weekend getaways. Complaints about her boring husband who doesn't understand ambition. References to meetings that weren't on any company calendar. The final message, sent just last night after we got home, was the clincher. "Dean suspects nothing. He's too busy with his little real estate deals to notice what's happening right under his nose." Too busy to notice. Right. I forwarded everything to a secure email account, then called Soren. "Please tell me you have good news," I said when he answered. "Better than good. I've been tracking Vossin's stock movements and there's been some interesting activity. Someone's been selling shares quietly, small amounts but consistent. Want to guess who?" "Rhett?" "Bingo. He's liquidating his position bit by bit, probably planning to jump ship once he's milked the company dry. But here's the beautiful part. He doesn't know about our accumulated holdings. As of this morning, you control 38% of voting shares. I felt a grin spread across my face. What about the emergency board meeting? Scheduled for tomorrow afternoon. Rhett thinks he's calling it to discuss expansion plans. He has no idea what's coming. That evening, Talia came home late, claiming she'd been stuck in traffic. Her story might have been believable if I hadn't driven past her office building at 6:30 and seen her car already gone. "How was your strategy session?" I asked over dinner. "Productive. We're really onto something big with this new initiative." "That's great. You and Rhett make quite a team." She looked at me sharply. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Just that you two seem to work well together." The conversation died there, but I could see the wheels turning in her head. She was wondering if I knew something, trying to figure out how much she'd revealed. After she went to bed, I made my final preparations. Bank accounts, credit cards, investment portfolios, everything that had my name on it was getting restructured. By morning, Talia would discover that her comfortable lifestyle had some strings attached, and I was holding all of them. I also placed a call to my lawyer. Not for anything dramatic, just to ensure that certain financial arrangements were properly documented and legally bulletproof. The next phase would require perfect timing. Talia's scream from the bathroom told me she'd discovered the first surprise. Her credit cards had been declined during her morning coffee run. When she tried to check her bank account, she found that our joint accounts had been legally separated overnight, leaving her with exactly what she'd contributed, which wasn't much. "Dean, what have you done?" I was sitting at the kitchen table, calmly eating breakfast and reading the financial section. "Good morning to you too, honey. Something wrong?" "My cards aren't working. The bank says that you no longer have access to accounts you never actually contributed to." "Yeah, that would be accurate." Her face went through several color changes. "You can't do this. I'm your wife." "Yes, you are. And as my wife, you're entitled to exactly half of what we built together during our marriage. Unfortunately for you, most of our assets were mine before we married, or were acquired using my investments and income." My lawyer was very thorough in explaining the distinctions. She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "This is about last night, isn't it? About Rhett's joke?" "Rhett's joke?" I set down my newspaper. "No, Talia. This is about 6 months of lies, secret meetings, and planning to leave your boring husband once you'd secured your position at Vossin." The color drained from her face entirely. "Oh yes, I know about the weekend trips, the private dinners, the emails discussing my little real estate deals, and how I suspect nothing. You were right about one thing. I have been busy with business, just not the kind you thought." I stood up and straightened my tie, a much nicer tie than the one I'd worn to the Christmas party. "Speaking of which, I have a board meeting to attend today, at Vossin Industries." "You're not on the board." "Actually, as of yesterday, I'm the largest single shareholder. Funny how these things work out." The Vossin Industries boardroom had never seen anything like what happened that afternoon. Rhett strutted in, expecting to discuss his expansion plans, only to find me sitting at the head of the table with Soren beside me, a stack of legal documents between us. "What's he doing here?" Rhett demanded, pointing at me like I was something unpleasant he'd stepped in. "Mr. Callix is here as the majority shareholder," announced the company secretary, a nervous man who'd clearly been briefed on the situation. "He's called this emergency meeting to address certain irregularities in company management." The look on Rhett's face was worth every penny I'd invested in this moment. Confusion, then disbelief, then dawning horror as the implications sank in. That's impossible. I would know if someone had been quietly acquiring shares through multiple investment vehicles over the past 3 years. I stood up, enjoying the way he flinched. "You're right, you should have known. A competent CEO would have been tracking his company's ownership structure more carefully." The next hour was a masterclass in corporate warfare. I presented evidence of Rhett's unauthorized stock sales, his misuse of company resources for personal entertainment, and his pattern of making decisions that benefited his personal portfolio more than the company's bottom line. But the real bombshell came when Soren presented the communications audit. We've discovered that sensitive company information has been leaked through unsecured personal email accounts, he announced, projecting Talia's emails onto the conference room screen. Information that was subsequently used for personal trading advantage. I watched Rhett's face as he realized what he was seeing. His private conversations with my wife, discussing company plans, stock movements, and strategic decisions, all documented, all time-stamped, all completely inappropriate for someone in Talia's position. "This is a setup," he sputtered. "You can't." "I can, and I have." I gathered my papers. "Effective immediately. You're suspended pending a full investigation. Security will escort you out." The room was silent except for the sound of Rhett's heavy breathing. Then, quietly, he asked, "What do you want?" "I want you to understand what it feels like to be underestimated. I want you to know that the cheap suit guy just took your company away from you. And I want you to remember this moment every time you think about treating someone like they don't matter." Security arrived right on cue. As they escorted Rhett out, he turned back to glare at me. "This isn't over." "Actually, it is. Check your parking space on the way out. You'll find it's been reassigned." That evening, Talia was waiting when I got home. She'd clearly spent the day making phone calls, trying to understand what had happened and how to fix it. "You've lost your mind," she said the moment I walked through the door. "Do you have any idea what you've done? Rhett will fight this. He has connections, lawyers, had connections, and his lawyers are about to be very busy with other matters." I poured myself a drink and settled into my chair. "Sit down, Talia, we need to talk." "I'm not sitting anywhere. You've ruined everything. My career, my reputation. Your career was built on sleeping with your boss and leaking confidential information. Your reputation was already ruined. I just made it public." She threw her purse at me. I ducked, and it hit the wall behind my chair. "You self-righteous piece of garbage. You think you're so smart, but you have no idea what you've started." "Actually, I know exactly what I've started, and I know exactly how it's going to end." My phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. "Meet me at the parking garage. We need to discuss terms. R." I showed Talia the message. "Looks like your boyfriend wants to negotiate." "Don't go. This is dangerous." For the first time since this whole thing started, she looked genuinely frightened. Not for herself, but for me. "Worried about me, Talia? That's touching. Don't be. Rhett's not dangerous, he's just desperate, and desperate people make mistakes." The Vossin Industries parking garage was deserted except for Rhett's BMW and my modest sedan. He was waiting by his car, pacing back and forth in the cold December air. "You son of a—" he started as I approached. "Careful, Rhett. We're on company property, and I'm pretty sure there are security cameras recording this conversation." That stopped him mid-sentence. He looked around, suddenly aware of his surroundings. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice lower now. "I want you to disappear. Quietly, professionally, with whatever dignity you have left intact." "And if I don't?" I pulled out my phone and showed him the screen. "Then tomorrow morning, every major business publication in the city receives a detailed report about your creative accounting methods, your inappropriate relationships with subordinates, and your pattern of using company resources for personal benefit. The SEC might also find it interesting." His face went pale. "You're bluffing." "Am I? Check your email when you get home. I've sent you a preview of what's coming if you decide to make this difficult." Rhett stared at me for a long moment, then suddenly lunged forward, trying to grab my phone. I stepped aside, and he stumbled into the side of his car. "That was stupid, Rhett." He straightened up, breathing hard. "You think you've won? You think this is over? I think you're about to make another bad decision. Don't." Instead of backing down, he pulled out his own phone. I'm calling the police. This is harassment, extortion. Go ahead. Call them. Explain how the CEO of a major corporation is being extorted by a guy in a cheap suit who somehow managed to buy your company out from under you. I'm sure they'll be very sympathetic." He hesitated, phone halfway to his ear. "Or," I continued, "you can accept the generous severance package I'm prepared to offer, sign a non-disclosure agreement, and move on with your life. Your choice." The wind picked up, swirling snow around the garage. Rhett looked at his reflection in his car window, then back at me. "How much?" "Enough to maintain your lifestyle for a while, provided you're smart about it. Not enough to be stupid about it." He was quiet for almost a minute. Then, slowly, he nodded. "I'll need the details in writing. You'll have them tomorrow, along with your final day at the office." As I walked back to my car, I heard him slam his fist against his BMW. The sound echoed through the empty garage like a gunshot. Phase 3 was complete. One more to go. Christmas Eve morning arrived with fresh snow and crystal-clear skies. Perfect weather for endings. Talia had spent the previous 3 days in a strange kind of limbo, alternating between rage and desperation. She'd tried calling lawyers, but discovered that everything I'd done was perfectly legal. She'd tried calling friends, but found that news of the Vossin Industries shakeup had already spread through their social circle. "I'm leaving," she announced over breakfast. "Where will you go?" "My sister's, until I figure things out." I nodded. "That's probably for the best." She stared at me across the table. "That's it? No fighting? No begging me to stay?" Would there be any point? "We were married for 8 years, Dean. Doesn't that mean anything to you?" I set down my coffee cup and looked at her, really looked at her, for what I knew would be the last time as husband and wife. "It meant everything to me, Talia. That's why this hurts so much." For a moment, her mask slipped, and I saw something that might have been regret. But then it was gone, replaced by the cold calculation I'd become too familiar with. "I never meant for it to happen this way." "Yes, you did. You planned every step of it. The only thing you didn't plan for was getting caught." She packed 2 suitcases and called a taxi. As she waited by the door, she turned back one last time. "You know, for someone who claims to be so hurt, you sure had your revenge planned out pretty thoroughly. I had 3 months to think about it while you were planning your exit strategy. So what now? You've got your company, your money, your precious pride. Was it worth it?" I walked to the window and watched the snow falling on our neighborhood. My neighborhood now. Everything looked clean and peaceful under the white blanket. "Ask me in a year." The taxi honked outside. Talia picked up her bags and headed for the door, then stopped. "Rhett's not a bad person, you know. He's just..." "Married to someone else? Yeah, I know. Funny how that didn't seem to matter to either of you." She flinched like I'd slapped her. "His wife doesn't understand him." "And I didn't understand you, apparently." The taxi honked again. This time she didn't stop walking. I watched from the window as she loaded her bags and climbed into the back seat. The taxi pulled away, disappearing around the corner into the falling snow. My phone buzzed. Text from Soren. "Board approved the restructuring plan. Rhett's replacement starts Monday. How are you holding up?" I typed back. "Better than expected. Thanks for everything." "What's next?" I looked around the house, our house, my house, and felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. "Next, I think I'll buy a better suit." The laughter that came out of me surprised me with its genuineness. For the first time since this whole thing started, it wasn't bitter or sarcastic or calculated. It was just relief. Outside, the snow kept falling, covering everything in pristine white, a clean slate, a fresh start. I poured myself a drink and raised it toward the window. "Merry Christmas, Dean. You earned this one." The house was quiet, except for the soft whisper of snow against the windows. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new decisions, new possibilities. But tonight, for the first time in months, I could sleep without wondering what lies were being told in the dark. The Christmas coup was complete. Dean Callix had gotten his last laugh after all.